So before we get into anything specific or major, I'd like to do a little backlog on Sydney and his history, since this whole Sydney's Backlog channel is not going to be from the very start of everything that has started. It's just been recommended that, video is always more powerful than words and doesn't lie. So from here on out, we'll start with videos instead. So this is a great way, I think, to be able to help his vets. If we ever have to see a specialist, we can just direct them right to the link, and they can see exactly what's going on. They don't have to guess if us as their patients, how patients forget things or leave things out, not intentionally, but maybe exaggerate things a little bit. This way, videos never lie, and this can really help Sydney out in the long run if we can't get things under control, which so far we haven't been able to. So the idea of a video log kind of popped up, and I thought it was a good idea, as well as my husband. So here's the first one with the backlog to get everything caught up to current, basically. So after our oldest dog developed cancer and passed away, we pretty much didn't think we'd ever get another dog again, because it completely broke our hearts, especially going through watching any animal or human that ever has cancer. You always know how terrible it is to watch someone go through, and seeing that in both family members and pets, it can be really heart-wrenching. So we really thought we weren't going to ever get another pet again, another dog, until our youngest dog at the time, who is Snickers, thought otherwise. He was really depressed and really looking for his brother. That they were very, very close, and so we decided, well, we're gonna have to. We can't let him keep being as depressed as he is. So that's when we started looking for another dog, another puppy. So we looked around. We tried a couple dogs from shelters, and that just didn't quite work out too well. And so I found a reputable breeder online from Minnesota who raised a half bench and half field Springer Spaniels. And this was very interesting to me since I like that breed a lot. So we looked at some pictures, and we checked the place out a little bit, and we said, okay, let's do it. So we bought one of her current pups that were for sale. And Sydney was born on June 24th, 2011, and we picked him up August 10th the same year. And we brought him home. And he was just the cutest little puppy, and he was the greatest puppy we've ever had. He never, ever chewed on anything that he wasn't supposed to. He never, like I said, chewed anything up as far as the furniture, the legs of chairs or tables or shoes or anything like that. He was really easy to housebreak. No problems there at all. It took less than a week to housebreak him, and he never ever made a mess in the house after that. He was a wonderful puppy, and he loved his new brother instantly, almost. They got along really, really well. And for the first roughly 4 years, it went on like that. We had wonderful, wonderful new fur baby, if you want to call him that, who loved his two favorite spots in the house, which is, I should say, the corner of the couch and the fireplace mantle. Those are probably his two favorite places to be. And of course, he always has to snuggle with his brother every once in a while, and he also loves to be on my part of the bed at night, thinking he's human and, has his head on the pillow and all this. So, unfortunately, our world came crashing down Let's see. It was around March 23rd of this year, 2015. It was at 7:55 at night. All of a sudden, Sydney just collapsed right there in the living room. Nothing was going on. We were just watching television like we always do at night. And he started having a grand mal seizure. Of course, at that time, I didn't know what this was. But it was a grand mal seizure, and we thought he was dying. We had no idea what was going on, what was wrong with him, or anything, and it scared us like you wouldn't believe. We called the emergency line for the veterinarian, and she verified that, yeah, he probably had a seizure, and bring him in the next morning. So we brought him in, and they did a complete blood work test to check for thyroid and any possible poisonings in the blood or anything else that may be causing the seizures, and everything came back normal. So she just sent us home with the hopes that this was just a one-time thing, and that was it. Unfortunately, that was not the case. April 2nd at 6:45 p.m., he had another one, and he spasmed for probably a good, minute and a half or so before he gained his consciousness back, basically. It was another grand mal seizure, like I was saying. And he had a hard time breathing, of course. He seemed to come out of it rather quickly, and he lost all control of his bowels and his bladder. That's one thing. Every single seizure he has, when it's the first seizure, he completely loses his bladder all the time. But it's just part of the disease and that. So we brought him back to the vet. And we said, this doesn't look like it's going to be a one-time thing. Something is wrong here. So I believe it was then, like I said, it was all blur back then, but he was put on phenobarbital either that time or the next time. Because the next time he had one was April 20th at 12:48 p.m. He was sleeping at this time on his normal favorite spot on the couch. Spasms lasted about a minute and a half long. This was a grand mal seizure again. Took him several minutes to come back to normal. And he lost complete control of his bowels and his bladder. And he seemed to recover okay from that. So every time he has one of these seizures, we call the vet, just to let her know exactly what happens and the situation surrounding them. Which, he's always sleeping, so it doesn't make too much sense of what could possibly be a trigger. And every time he has one, the vet has been steadily raising the phenobarbital throughout this time, so keep that in mind. On June 15th, at 6:50 a.m. of 2015, he was sleeping in front of the couch and lasted about 2 minutes with a grand mal seizure. It took a while for him to recover, but that was probably the only time he didn't lose control of his bladder, which was odd. That was just the one grand mal seizure. And then July 4th, he had another one at 6:12 a.m. It lasted about a minute. It was a fairly mild grand mal seizure, and he did lose control of his bladder. He seemed to recover really quickly, and that was pretty much it. So we thought the phenobarbital was going to be helping, and of course it was upped again after that seizure. Then on July 19th at 6:25 a.m. Was the first one he has ever had when he was actually awake. Before this time, he always had them while he was sleeping, these grand mal seizures. They lasted about a minute. He lost his his bladder control, and it really took him a long time to come out of it. Just wanting to run around. He was blind. Things seemed to be getting a little bit worse. And then this is when he started. July 19th is when he started having these cluster seizures. Things start to get worse. So the same day, on July 19th, at 2:35 p.m., he was awake. And he had a second grand mal seizure, but he came out of it rather quickly. So we started to get concerned because he never had more than one seizure at a time. So we were getting worried. So they upped the phenobarbital again. And then on August 7th, at 7:25 a.m., he was awake. And he went to the corner. He has this corner behind the couch that he sometimes goes to when we can tell he's going to have a seizure, because he just acts nervous and he kind of like goes off into that corner. So he knew he was going to have one this time. He doesn't do it all the time, but when he knows he's going to have one, he will do that. He was actually kind of just laying there, and then he had a grand mal seizure, lasted about a minute, lost his bladder control, like always. And then, and that was the only seizure he had that day. And then on August 15th, at 9:59 p.m., so they range wildly in the times. So there's no real set time or anything like that. August 15th, 9:59 p.m., he lasted about 90 seconds, about a minute and a half. It seemed like he was out of it for a while. One of the few times he actually didn't lose control of his bladder, and he just it took a real long time for him to come out of it. It seemed like he actually passed out this time after the seizure, which was a little bit odd, not normal for him. And that was the only seizure he had that day. And then September was when everything went crazy basically. September 9th, 2015 at 9:45 p.m. He was walking through the kitchen and he just fell over in a grand mal seizure. Lasted about a minute. He recovered relatively well from this one, but he did lose control of his bladder. At the same day, at 9 p.m., he had a second grand mal seizure. Lasted for a couple minutes, quite a long time. And it took him a real long time to recover, and we were starting to get nervous. And then the very next day, September 10th, at 3:35 a.m., so this is basically just 6 hours later, he had another grand mal seizure where he was on the bed. We were all sleeping, and he actually fell out of the bed. He always sleeps with us. And had a grand mal seizure right there in the bedroom. And it lasted his normal couple minutes. So he's starting to cluster now severely at this time. And like I said, every time I call the vets after he has a seizure, and they always up it. And I think this was mainly, I don't think he had a seizure, but I think it was just a reaction to the up dosage in the medication. But on the 12th, the same month of September, he actually urinated on the bed, which is totally not like him. That's completely out of character, and I really don't think he had a seizure, because something like that wakes me up instantly. So I don't really understand what happened with that. He just seemed really off that day. He never had a seizure that day, but it just weird. And at the same time, he was also taking these allergy medications, thinking he had an allergy because he kept chewing all of his fur away on his front paws, or on his front arms. Not really his paws, but up higher than that. So he was going through a lot of medications, so I wouldn't doubt if something was happening with the medication that caused him to do that. at the same time, that was the only time that ever happened, so there was really no worry on that one. September 24th at 3:10 p.m., walking in the living room, saw he was going to go into a seizure, and it lasted about a minute. He did lose control of his bladder. He came out of it pretty fast. He was mumbling around soon after, like nothing happened. That's his normal self. Occasionally he's blind and he just tries to run everywhere, and it's not too great. So, same day, September 24th, 3:30 p.m. So this is like 5 minutes later. This is the very first time he had a different type of seizure than grand mal's. He had, after I found out what it was, it's called a focal seizure. He had that where his mouth just goes crazy. It's kind of like his mouth has a seizure, but not the rest of his body. It's really odd. We waited with him for about 15 seconds, and that was about all he did. And then he seemed to be a little bit blind, but he doesn't lose control of his bladder or his bowels at that time. So that was the first time. It was a little weird. He had a very different type of seizure for the first time, and of course, upping the medication a little bit after each one of these seizures. Clusters happen. I was really starting to get scared because now he's having about 4 seizures at a time, 3 to 4 seizures in relatively quick succession here. And then October 10th, 2015, at 8:20 p.m., he had a grand mal seizure, lasted about a minute. He was out for about a minute, completely blacked out, and then he just kind of stood up and was okay. And then just a couple minutes after that, he had a focal seizure that lasted about 2 minutes. And then about 5 minutes after that, he had another focal seizure that lasted just a minute, if that. And then about 5 minutes after that, he had a full grand mal seizure. So within 15 minutes, he's had a total of 4 seizures now. And now we're getting really, really, really concerned. So after that one, we called the vet and said that this is getting scary now, because now he's clustering and he's having all these seizures in a very short amount of time, and we're getting really scared. So she upped the phenobarbital to the absolute max level they could possibly give him. I think his blood levels are about 43. I think the max was like 47 or 48, but it was the highest that they definitely want to give him. So we're hoping that works. The next video that comes out will be his last cluster group of seizures that he had. We will go through that a little bit more in there, and then let you know what happened with the medication after that. But so far, all this time, slowly upping up the phenobarbital over all these months has not helped at all. He always has seizures everywhere between 2 to 3 weeks. Nothing's getting any better. I'm hoping adding a medication to his phenobarbital will help, but we'll have to see. And hence the reason for this log. So there's the backstory of Sydney and everything that we've been going through since March, and he's been one heck of a trooper. I can tell you that much. It's anybody that knows epilepsy and anything with seizures knows how heart-wrenching it is to watch somebody that you love suffer with it, whether it's human or your fur baby. And all I can say is you have to keep strong for them, because they're not going to be able to do it on their own. And it's obviously not their fault that they have this disease. What I do hope that at some point is a cure will be eventually found as to to stopping these. Obviously, if those of you who don't really know what epilepsy is basically the medical term for we have no idea why they're having seizures. That's the basics of it. There's obviously there's two different major kinds of epilepsy, but it all translates into the same thing. Doctors have no idea why people are having seizures, so they call them epileptic. Which is sad, because you would think in this day and age there wouldn't be too much that we don't know. But I guess that's life. Alrighty, so we'll see you in the next vlog.